And here to introduce our speakers is Mike Donnelly.
Thanks, Mark. As you have heard, our Chico International Projects Committee is launching what we're calling the Women's Empowerment Project. It's basically a startup venture to create and produce reusable feminine hygiene products and accessories in Mexico. As I mentioned, our partners from Guadalajara and Tlalpataki, Mexico are on the call. They will be our partners going forward. And the goal is to produce desperately needed sanitary pads for girls and young women to keep them in the schools and in the workplace. It's a pretty big problem and needed around the world and even here in the United States. And we're modeling our program after a very successful project launched in Africa by Davis Sunrise Rotary Club. And I'm very happy to introduce Dr. David Kopp. He is a professor emeritus of UC Davis. He was in the Department of Philosophy. I would also like to introduce his fellow project leaders. Megan Likes is a CPA and a disruptor in the accounting industry. She owns several businesses, including a window cleaning business, and is ranked #3 in the world for female window cleaners. And I think she might be a great warm-up act for Rob and Brent with assets minus liabilities and equities. And I would like to introduce you to Patsy Inoue. Patsy was a government information librarian and archivist for nearly 40 years at UC Davis, and she was honored as Rotarian of the Year last year by the Davis Club. So I'm really looking forward to the presentation. I really appreciate the help and the guidance that the Davis Club has given us so far. And I'm looking forward to this. So David, I'd like to turn this over to you and look forward to it.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. We have a slide presentation that Megan has on her computer, and she's going to introduce the slide presentation. So I'll pass it over to her, and then we're going to rotate amongst ourselves as we go through the slides. Megan, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yay.
Yay. And hopefully you can see my screen. My name is Megan Likes, and this is the PADS project as we know it. 1 in 5 girls in the world are missing 1 week of school every single month because they cannot afford access to feminine hygiene products. 4.2 million girls in Kenya alone were needing our help because they were missing 20% of their schooling. Patsy's going to tell you a little bit about the Harvey girls and how they got started in Davis. Patsy?
I know Patsy's on the call somewhere.
She's here somewhere. Oh, there she is.
I'll start again.
Okay.
Our project began about over 3 years ago, and this was even before we decided to partner with the Nakuru Rotary Club. We were sewing pads thinking we would be sending them to Africa, and we were very slow at sewing these pads. We started with a design called moon catchers. We didn't like the design, and we decided we would create our own, and we looked at designs all over the internet and came up with a design that we thought had the quality that we wanted. We had monthly sewing bees, and one of the women who sewed with us said that the design we were sewing at the time reminded her of her Uncle Harvey's ears. So we became the Harvey girls.
And there's a picture of Uncle Harv. And so we were sewing so slow that we were looking for partners because we realized it wasn't sustainable for a bunch of people in the United States to be sourcing materials and then mailing them abroad. And at the rate we were going, a couple hours a month, it just wasn't working. So David's going to tell us about our partnership with the Rotary Club of Nakuru, which is based in Kenya.
Right. So our idea was that ideally the pads would be made by women in the country that needed the pads. And so we looked for a Rotary Club we could partner with, and by luck, we found the Rotary Club of Nakuru, which was already interested in reusable sanitary pads, and they've been distributing pads made by Days for Girls, another NGO. But when we approached them with the idea of this project, they were very enthusiastic, and Elizabeth Nguru from that club helped us design the project. You can see here women sewing pads, and you can see Megan with one of the women on the sewing team. Here is a bunch of pads in front of the Nakuru Hospice, or one of the sewing teams operated, and you can see us there. We visited Nakuru in October and helped distribute pads. We overall distributed bags of reusable sanitary pads to 1,000 girls in schools in the Nakuru region. And here's a few pictures of girls from these schools receiving their pads. So our agenda, we're going to tell you a bit about the history of the project, the need, the goals, the challenges, the money, the impact, the lessons, and the hope for the future. So I think it's over to you, Megan.
Yeah, and I'm going to start by talking about the history. So the history of this project actually started in January of 2017 when one of our members, who's a doctor, was traveling to Uganda on a medical mission. And she traveled to Uganda and came back to our club and said, they're doing these incredible things for women. Did you know that girls are missing school and they're dropping out of school early? So in March 2018, we decided that we were going to start sewing and we needed partners, we needed help. So we started talking to the Nakuru Rotary Club, which we found from one of these project fairs for East Africa, which was a Rotary project fair in East Africa. In July 2018, we applied for a district grant, which we'll tell you more about later. It was awarded. We started working on a prototype pad design. Several of our members in our club actually tried them to see how they worked. Patsy worked with other departments on campus to figure out about the absorbency of particular fabrics. In December, we were able to mail our first pad prototype to Kenya, and they started looking for ways to source the same materials in Kenya and putting together those sewing bee groups. In August of 2019 is when they actually started sewing the pads, and we visited last October, a year ago this month. In August of this year is when the pilot project was wrapped up. So we made it through all 1,000, I think it was 1,010 girls served, over 8,080 pads sewn. And we're going to tell you more about that in a minute. And we're excited because now the Chico Rotary Club is on our timeline in October of 2020 as we kind of pass the torch to you and you pass it to your partners in Mexico, who I'm very happy to see on the call. I want to talk a little bit about the need and why this project was so compelling to us. We mentioned it already, this 5 days of school every single month and the snowball effect of that. So the girls were getting behind. Their parents were saying, well, if you're behind in school, there's no point in paying your school fees. They were dropping out significantly earlier. And they were embarrassed. There was so much shame and humiliation around puberty and having their periods and being different than the boys in their classes. And we felt like living in the United States where we have pretty easy access to affordable feminine hygiene products, that this was a need that absolutely needed addressing and needed to be solved. So I'm going to pass it to Patsy, and she's going to tell you a little bit about our goals and what our goals of this particular project was during that grant period and since January 2017.
We wanted to sew, as I started earlier, we wanted to sew a pad that was really durable. We didn't want the stitching to fall out around the corners, and so we decided on our two-piece design, which I've sent some of the examples to the club. We also experimented with the fabric to see which was the most absorbent, and but then all of those decisions had to be remade because the fabric in Kenya was so different from what we were doing here. We used Tyvek, which is for the moisture layer, and they had to use shower curtains for their for the plastic moisture layer. But this, in addition, the seamstresses in Kenya also changed the design a little bit and made the pads thinner because I think they, the materials were more expensive. We had to communicate to them about the project. And if there was one thing I had to say, we had to communicate with them a lot about the project. We relied on the Nakuru Club to do the training and the empowerment of the local seamstresses.
Go ahead.
Seamstresses, and they did a really good job, but they did find that they needed to have a supervisor and a trainer, and she also became a coach and would go to the 3 different groups of people, women that were sewing the pads, and encourage them to do it. Some women were slower than others, and we actually found that one group of women got had to bring on their adult daughters so that they would help them with the sewing. There were many hard decisions to make about as I said, about the fabric. We worked and about the machines. We found out that they didn't have electricity for many hours of the day, and so we made the decision with them to buy treadle machines, and they're the old treadle machines that we see in our antique stores. And they were using them, and boy, were they fast on those treadle machines. They could really treadle them along. But what they're finding now that those machines are breaking, they are 100 years old, and so they're looking into getting electrical machines. Our contact, Elizabeth, main sewing group was this hospice group of cancer survivors, which they were the best sewers and the most enthusiastic and people. And so that's where the supervisor who did the training and the coaching and the enthusiasm came from. And you have to remember that these women in Nakuru didn't know how to sew. They virtually started with that and having to learn how to use the machine, how to cut out the pattern. So we were very lucky that we had a coach and a supervisor who wanted to do that. She was very good at motivating. Another challenge was transportation. And not everybody in Kenya has a car or a reliable car, and the roads are very poor. A lot of dirt roads, a lot of narrow roads, a lot of rain. And so transportation, getting the materials and getting the pads to the girls was very difficult. We were able to do a small survey before the coronavirus came, and it was it was less than 100 girls. And they were saying that a small percentage of the girls said that the pads leaked and that washing was a problem because these people are living in areas where they're not running water. Running water does not come to their house if they have water at their house. And so the cleaning of it was very important. And so they've added salt to help clean the pads. But as we all know, coronavirus has interfered with everything. And we did ask for an extension on the project so that we could at least complete it. And we got the extension because it was a regional grant from our Rotary Club region. So it was hard to get the women to go back to work with the coronavirus, but we were able to send 8,080 pads to 1,010 girls.
So David's going to tell us a little bit about how the money worked for this project.
So we were able to help 1,000 girls, and the total budget was only $10,200. So it's a remarkable return on the investment. The district contributed $6,800, as you can see here. Our club contributed only $3,400. So, you know, it was a really good investment for the district and for the club. The pads cost just over $1 a piece, but that includes the startup cost of buying the machines. So the ongoing cost once the initial capital investment is made is probably, we don't know for sure because we don't have that data complete from the Nakuru Rotarians, but it's around a little bit under $1 a piece. So next slide rather. So the impact of this, as I said, 1,000 girls received bags that you can see here. The bags each contained 8 usable sanitary pads, underwear, a washcloth, and soap. As a result of getting these pads, they felt empowered. They gained confidence in going to school. They were able to avoid absences. They avoided the teasing and the humiliation that they often experience at the hands of fellow students and sometimes from their teachers. And the sewing groups also felt empowered. They earned a bit of money through sewing the pads, and they were able to take part in this project that gave them a sense of camaraderie and a sense of the value of what they were doing.
A couple, it's not on this slide, but a couple of the things. One is the pads last 3 to 5 years. So we're still using pads from our prototype original design that are working at 4 years. It's been 4 years and they haven't fallen apart yet. So these girls are not only getting access to education for a year, but the pad design is intended to last for 3 to 5. And then the other thing is with the sewing groups, we didn't realize, we always thought about the girls and keeping them in school, but we didn't realize how empowering it could be when you give somebody a skill and a trade like sewing, and you give them an income for selling the pads. And so that was really surprising to us, and a wonderful surprise that these women that were doing the sewing felt so empowered. And we were actually able to bring them with us to the schools for the site visits, and they were able to distribute the pads that they'd sewn to the girls that were going to be benefiting. And we felt like that was a huge motivator for them. We want to talk, oh, I'm sorry, David, do you want to share about the schools?
This is just the list of the schools that were served by the pads. As you can see, there's a huge number of schools. Each of these schools had, between 30 and 50 girls who we were able to give kits to. So many of the schools were in Nakuru, but mostly in the Nakuru region and in other nearby regions. Just a ton of schools, including village schools and city schools.
And the girls were chosen by their teachers they were identified as missing school because of their cycles and not being able to afford a reusable sanitary pad. So that's how the girls were chosen. We're going to run through the lessons real quickly because your club is looking at doing a project like this. We're hoping you can learn from us. So lesson number 1 for us was, are the girls willing to try them? So there was a little bit of stigma in Africa about reusable sanitary pads, the class structure, not being able to afford disposable sanitary pads. So just having frank discussions about, is there willingness to try a reusable sanitary pad? And then also paying adequately for the work. We had a little bit of trouble motivating seamstresses in the beginning, and we were paying 20 cents per pad design. It turns out they were taking a little bit longer to sew, so maybe a higher price that we would have paid the tailors would have helped motivate a little bit more. Patsy hit on this next one, but she's going to go through a couple of these lessons next.
Yes, this is the use of salt was something that came late and it may have been a result of the survey that we did. In this picture, you can see Megan with a woman who is the OBGYN doctor who's in the town of Nakuru, and she was helping us distribute the pads. And I think it was her idea to start to help clean the pads with salt, and that's been very helpful to them, and the girls have, and that's been very good with the girls. And we really, I can't stress enough the quality control. There's, you need to have the pads be as good as they can be so they can last the 3 to 5 years that we're seeing that the pads wear, and that they can be comfortable. And we had women here in the United States wearing them and giving feedback to us early on, and then, women in Kenya also. And I touched quite a bit on the quality of the sewing machines. In the final annual report that Nakuru did, they said that they do want to try to get electric sewing machines, even though it will cut down on the amount of time that they can sew, that at least it'll be easier to sew than using those treadle sewing machines that you have to pedal on.
So one of the things we learned is that we need to within this kind of a project, we need to pay attention to the local cultural attitudes towards menstruation and the kind of shame that sometimes women are made to feel at the time of menstruation, and the attitude that men and children have to this. So, this will be different in different countries and different regions of different countries. So this has to be taken into account. And we also, as a result of this, realized that we needed to pay more attention than we did to education and to addressing any stigma there might be around the use of reusable sanitary pads. The OBGYN in the photo there is a member of the Nakuru Rotary Club, and she was part of the team in the Nakuru Club that designed the project and that worked on distributing the pads. And you can see her, along with Megan, teaching the kids a little bit about the use of pads and the importance of cleaning the pads and so on. But we felt that we should have done more in that regard. And another lesson that we learned from the project was that we're not only helping girls by doing this, but we're helping the people on the sewing teams as well, who, as I said before, earned a small income from this. We should try to enable them to earn a larger income. And that's one of the things that we learned from this project.
So we want to leave you with hope, and we want to leave you with knowing that it was a very rewarding project for us. And we still have more work to be done in Kenya, 4.2 million girls, and we've addressed 1,000 of them. So we're feeling motivated to continue finding more avenues of people who don't have access and doing that. David, do you want to talk about how this is a pilot project?
Well, this was intended as a pilot project. We hope to carry on and do other projects similar to it in Kenya after learning what we did through doing the project. And we hope it'll be modeled around the world by other Rotary clubs, starting with Patsy.
Yeah.
Starting with your club going to Mexico. And we're just really enthusiastic about you partnering with the Guadalajara Rotary clubs and trying to work out what your needs and their needs will be so that you can be as successful as we think we have been with the Nakuru, Kenya Rotary Club.
So thank you very much for having us. This is our contact information. If you have any questions for any of us directly, you can email us. We've also been in touch with your committee working on this project, so we're available that way too. And we're working on a website so that we can share what we've learned, similar to what we just presented. But also, Patsy sent your club a kit of, all the sample projects, all the sample pads, and what you do after which step. So we're working on compiling that all to a website. So if you'd like to take a picture of this screen as well.
And I don't know whether there's time for questions, but we'd be happy to take questions if you have any.
So if you have a question, open up your microphone and ask away. Mike or Joel, do you have any comments about our project going forward?
Yes. Thank you. Turn this down. That was a fantastic program, very professional, and you're setting the bar very, very high for a pilot program. That's really impressive. And we've already learned so much just from talking to all three of you. And, on our team, Jenny Moore has received the samples, and she's taking the lead on the prototyping. And our goal is to really leverage and build upon what you've already created. And I know it's a real challenging thing. And I really want to encourage the guys to pay attention to this too. It's really important. And it's important for us to be involved and to help move this forward as well. Joe, I don't know if you have a couple of comments or you want to add to that, but I thought this was a real win.
Thanks again for this great presentation. I knew it would be great because their introduction to us had been so good a couple of months ago. I just want to thank our Rotary for putting the money up that's going to allow us to prime the pump on this project. Over the next year or two, we'll be putting a district Rotary grant in, and I'll be organizing a posse to head down to Davis to kidnap all these people and bring them into the Chico Noon Rotary as permanent members.
Well, we'd love to travel with you to Mexico. We all have our eyes on that trip. So whenever you're ready, we'd love to go in your suitcases or even carry your suitcases. And Mike, just to expand on what you said, having men be a part of this project, it's really been huge having David help us champion this, particularly in Kenya. And I just like to remind the men in our club, you all have wives, daughters, mothers. So I know it can be a little bit taboo, but I applaud you all for taking this project on. And Mike, I'm very happy to hear you guys spearheading it.
And I see that Enrique Garcia had his hand up. So Enrique, do you have a comment or a question?
This is a really great project. And you seeing these girls, I have seen cases like this one in our country, in our place. I mean, about 5 to 6 hours in an indigenous area that they don't have any money, and they have to be in home for all these days, and they cannot go out for the chain of the cycle every month. So this will be a really great project for us, and we're going to learn a lot from you, and we can replicate this and make this happen not only in our area, we can call and make happen to in other areas and with other clubs. We are ready to make this happen. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Enrique. Mike Groom, did you have your hand up? I see there we go. And Mike, we're not hearing you right now. Thanks. Sorry about that, Mike. We don't hear you on that. So, yep. Hey, Redmond's Law. That's what we call it here in Chico. Patsy, Megan, and David, thank you very much for your presentation today. I'm glad that we've been able to partner with you as teachers in how to do this project for ourselves down in Mexico. And as appreciation, we are making a contribution in your name to Rotary Centennial Park. You probably saw us talk about it a little bit here earlier. And again, thank you very much. And if you have any questions whatsoever, you can always get a hold of Mike or Joel.